Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our July edition of the MPF webinar series. We're being joined by Sherry Cushman. Hi, Sherry, how are you?
I'm great. How's everyone?
Good to see you. And Sherry's been with us once before. She joined us when COVID first hit, and we were all freaking out. So it's nice to have you back, Sherry.
Glad to be here, John.
And Uri, good to see you as well. How are things on your end?
Good, John. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Well, it's good to be here. We took last month off. We did our NPF Leadership Conference in April in Atlanta, and that consumed a lot of our bandwidth. So we took a little time off the webinar series, but we're back in the saddle and have a very, very hot topic. Registration is among the strongest. This is our 29th webinar since COVID hit us, and I think number 2 in terms of number of registrants, surpassed only by PPP loans. How to find forgiveness in your
Hard to
PPP
compete.
loan.
Hard to compete with free money.
That's our
Free
number
money.
1 topic, free money.
Of all
And so-
time.
And so now this figuring out how to go with a hybrid workplace model, if we want to go there, firms are really trying to figure this out. So Sherry's got some great data she's going to be sharing with us, and we'll introduce her formally in a few minutes. As always, we'll sprinkle in some live audience polling questions, so don't fall asleep on us. Be ready to vote. And being here in Atlanta, we know how to count votes in Georgia. So we'll count them 2 or 3 times if need be and certify the results. And we have polling. When y'all registered, we asked a handful of questions, and we'll share that data with you. People love the data we gather and present at these programs, as well as the banter among our faculty. And we've been blessed with some great speakers, including our guest speaker today, Sherry. So with that, we have a few minutes to kill before we officially start. Sherry, where do you sit today? Where are you?
I'm actually sitting in Emerald Isle, North Carolina today. It's a beautiful sunny beach day. Unfortunately, I'm in here and everyone's outside, but I'm glad to be with everybody today because we've got a lot of important things to share with you and insights to share. So.
I'm sure your friends and family on the beach would much rather be here at the webinar.
Yeah, no doubt.
And Uri, where are you today?
I'm sitting in a suburb of Jerusalem in Israel.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Isn't it
That's
unbelievable? Hey, we can pull this off. Sherry, we had one a couple of weeks ago. We, I think, had 4 different continents on the faculty. It's incredible. And it's like we're all in the same room, very little lag. It's just incredible.
That's what I'm shocked about, is that there is no lag. I mean,
Yeah.
I thought you were in New York, to be honest.
Yep. Well, the background's New York, so, you know, it's almost like I'm in New York.
Yeah. How long you been there for?
I come often.
For you. That's great.
And I sit in Atlanta, hot Atlanta. The forecast is teasing the triple digits this weekend as that big mass of hot air works its way east. So good to have everyone with us. Let me go ahead and we will formally start our webinar right now at the top of the hour. So welcome everybody. 29th edition of the MPF webinar series. And delighted to be joined by my colleague, Uri Gutfreund. Uri, how are you, sir?
I am great, John. Good to see you.
Fantastic, and good to see you as well. Uri runs the Senior Vice President Managing Principal at Ames and Goff, recently made a change. So Uri, always good to be working with you on these programs. And we run a little consultancy and a community to help managing partners and law firm leaders be more effective in a very challenging and increasingly important role. Our guest speaker is Sherry Cushman. We met her briefly as we were doing our lead-in. Sherry, how are you?
I'm doing great, John. Glad to be here today.
Now, and we're glad to have you. Sherry, we've known each other, it's got to be 15, 20 years through ALA. She's been on the faculty of some of our managing partner programs, did a webinar with us early on. And she runs the legal sector advisory group at Cushman Wakefield, which includes about 450 real estate professionals honed in on law firms, and they are the leader in tenant representation of law firms in the world. And Sherry has been leading this group for a good while and has leased over her career, some 20 million square feet of office space? That's a lot of office space.
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking about virtual, and I noticed in your updated bio, Sherry splits her time between Florida, Maryland, and Utah, and pretty much works virtually these days.
I do. And I've had no problems at all. It's been really fascinating to see, particularly in the legal sector. I used to be on the road 160, 180 days a year, and with the exception of 10 meetings since COVID, all of my law firm clients, we've just been doing everything remote. That doesn't mean we don't still do boots on the ground building tours and things like that, but all of our big macro strategy meetings have all been done remotely.
Where have all our frequent flyer miles gone?
Exactly.
They just keep rolling over. And, but Sherry, good to have you with us. And yeah, things have changed a lot since we were last together. A couple of announcements and we'll jump right in. Our webinar series, we pull these off on the third Wednesday of the month. 2 o'clock is what we shoot for. And you'll be seeing upcoming programs. We're going to do a reprise on what's going on out in Arizona and Utah, which should be an interesting topic, those regulatory sandboxes. So keep these in mind coming forward. We're working on a fall symposium in Chicago. There may be a date change here due to the Jewish holiday on October 5th. So we may be sliding this date to October 7th, working through the details now. But our fall symposium drills down on a topic, and we'll likely be talking about building a culture that attracts and retains tomorrow's talent, which will dovetail a little bit with what we talk about today. We do a weekly newsletter, the website, and we're launching some Zoom conference calls. If you've attended one of our programs, we're putting those out there and trying to go virtual with a lot of our managing partner programming. So we're trying to stay hip and keep up with trends in the evolving workplace. Today we have 178 managing partners, law firm leaders. We'll be talking about trends, best practices in hybrid workplace models, and how to figure out what's the right mix for your law firm. As I mentioned, we'll do some polling questions. There's a question box that Uri will monitor. We all know how to work that by now, but if you have any questions you want to ask Sherry or either of us, type them on in there and we'll do our best to mine those questions as we go through our hour. Today's program will be recorded and shared with everybody here. You can share that link within your firm, and all of our sessions are archived on the Managing Partner Forum website, and we've covered a slew of topics. We'll do another program in August, so stay tuned, details. Get out your polling devices, everybody, and this is mostly for Sherry's benefit to give her a sense of firm sizes represented on today's call. So if you would, to test your voting machines and give us a sense who's on today's call, fill out our first of 4 audience polling questions. And we'll give you a few more minutes to vote here. Looks like we've got about 3/4 of our attendees in. And let me close that and share our registrants today. So Sherry, that gives you a sense, squarely set on mid-sized firms.
Yep.
Mostly in that 10 to 100 lawyer range. So with that, let's roll right in and keep things moving. And this next question will be, when you registered, has COVID increased your firm's census focus on long-term strategic planning?
John's screen.
I gotta hide it. I always forget to do that. Thank you for reminding me. I always forget to do that. So here, when you're registered, are you focusing more on strategy? Is COVID prompting your firm to think a bit more strategically, a bit more long-term? And it looks like, sure enough, for 85% of you, it has. Running more like a business with a focus on long-term strategy, goals, and objectives. We asked, have you figured out?
Screen.
I don't know what you mean by that.
We're seeing
We're
employers are
seeing the polling results. We're seeing the poll results.
Oh. All right, how's that?
Nope.
Back to polling results.
All right, let me go to question one. Is COVID your firm's impact on strategy? Have you figured out your long-term workplace model? And it looks like most folks on today's call, nearly 4 and 5, are still trying to figure it out. Looks like 1 and 8 has said, yeah, we've got it figured out. We're going with our long-term workplace model as we come out of COVID. We asked which statement best reflects your firm's future workplace model.
John, we're looking at the poll results still. Now we're looking at the correct slide.
All right, I don't know, our technology is really acting up on us today, isn't it? Sherry, you were having some problems. I'm having some problems here too, so something's a little quirky. You see where StubHub was down? I tried to buy some Braves tickets this weekend. StubHub's website is down for the past 2 days. So any event, our question here was, and again, our technology's a little muddy. Has COVID increased your focus on long-term strategy? Which statement best reflects your firm's future workplace model? And it looks like most of us are looking to go remote some form or fashion and include our support staff, which is good to see. I think Sherry's going to talk to us a little bit about how important it is to factor your support staff into the policies you set around remote work and return to office. In about half the firms, we still have some, quote, lively discussions going on about whether we bring everybody in or try to allow for a more remote working situation, at least the flexibility. And 11% say we're bringing everybody back to the office. You can't run a law firm remotely. That doesn't work. So there is that mindset out there among quite a few managing partners that you can't run a law firm remotely. We asked this question as well back in February, and I thought it'd be helpful to kind of refresh the top concern as we contemplate a hybrid workplace model: the culture, retaining that collaboration, the collegiality, the sense of firm, associate development and retention. And I think Sherry's going to talk strongly to that point. We're all looking for that talent. And if you're not accommodating remote work preferences, you may lose some talent, recruiting, retention. So these are the things that firms are concerned about. We're going to ask Sherry, we're going to give her about 20, 25 minutes to talk to us about the big picture and showcase highlights of a survey they do every year called Bright Insight. We'll let Sherry set that up. Then we're going to come back, have a conversation among the three of us, throw some polling questions out there, discuss, and hopefully leave everybody with some good, thoughtful, actionable items coming out of today's program. So Sherry, let me see if I can make this work and put you as our presenter, which should bring up your slideshow. And off we go.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So for those of you that are on the call that I've met over the past years at MPF conferences, good to see you again. It's hard to believe that we're sitting here almost 2.5 years later since COVID took place. And I will say one thing, I personally have been doing this for 37 years, working with law firms all around the globe. And if someone would have told me that we'd be sitting here today doing what we're doing today, I would have said that is an impossibility and never would have thought that the impact that this pandemic that has had on the sector would have influenced it as much as it has today. So I'm going to give you a condensed version of a global webinar that we provided in early June, just last month. And I think it's going to be stock full of a lot of insights and thoughts of some of the issues that you're all dealing with. So I'm going to go start macro, and then I'm going to drill down to a lot of the micro issues. So when COVID first hit, there was a global paranoia within the sector of what are we going to do? This is going to crush our revenue. How are people going to be working remotely? We've never done this before. We've never seen this before. Everybody was reading their leases saying, somehow do I not have to pay rent anymore? And around months 4, 5, and 6, we began to see a preliminary settling in the industry. There was still a lot of paranoia, but overall, we closed out 20 and 21 incredibly well. And in fact, if you look at the global legal sector revenue last year alone was over $713 billion in the legal sector. We've never in the history of having law firms seen this before. And of this $713 billion, close to half of it was earned in the United States alone. So we saw revenue increase. We saw the first law firm ever to hit the 6 billion mark, Kirkland & Ellis. 100% of AM law firms increased in revenue, in some cases by double digits. And now over 52% of the AM 100 firms are $1 billion or more business entities. So we saw this incredible strength and growth and revenue growth. But unfortunately, we saw a lot of it, what I like to say, in the big firms and in big law. While many small to mid-sized firms still did incredibly well, the ones that seem to have done really, really well in the pandemic and experienced significant growth, and that growth came, with that growth also came the stealing of a lot of talent from small to mid-sized firms. So the big question is, can this be maintained? No one, again, ever thought this would happen, but what we're hearing consistently across all markets and law firms of all sizes is that while in many cases attorneys working remotely have even increased billing and productivity, what's been suffering is the day-to-day management, business development, training and mentoring of people one-on-one, and the recruitment and retention of additional talent. So there's a concern about this kind of shift of, yeah, we're making money, but are we really taking care of our homes? So we, every single year, and we're actually going to send this to each of you digitally, is our Bright Insight report that will be coming out. And there's a lot more that I'm going to share today that read it cover to cover. I think you'll find some really good information. So the COVID impact overall, 85% of firms, and by the way, we had a almost 50-50 response rate between big firms and 100, 200 and small to mid-sized firms. So 50-50. So 85% of our respondents said that COVID actually has had a favorable impact on our firm. It also has forced us to really rethink every aspect of our people and business. 80% of our respondents said that they agree or they strongly agree. And I like to use the analogy of a tennis ball. I have a golden retriever who loves to tear those tennis balls up. And the legal sector pre-COVID, I kind of viewed as a tennis ball. And law firms would look at that tennis ball, little piece here, little piece there, let it roll around a little bit, but never really tear the ball apart and then try to put it together again. Well, the tennis ball's been shred in a million pieces. And all those pieces are things like profitability, technology, recruiting, retention, strategy, long-term succession planning. And all of a sudden now, law firms are looking at themselves in a way that they've never had before. And they're looking at it differently than they did pre-pandemic. And one thing is for sure, it is no longer a one-size-fits-all model. It used to drive me crazy when a firm would say, well, we're not going to consider that. Show me 10 of the firms who have done it and done it successfully, and then we might. We're seeing all rules thrown out. We're seeing new attempts at everything from technology to new hybrid workplaces to designs down to 7 feet by 10 feet for a lawyer's office. We've seen it all. So the influence that it's had, which I personally think is a long, long overdue market correction, is that every firm has its own balancing act to tackle. I'm not going to say any one answer today is right for all of you, because it's not. It is all about determining what is right for your people, your attorneys, your staff, what is right for your clients, what is right for your strategy and your goals as it is moving forward, and then balancing that to figure out what is the right solution for you. And truly, we have never seen such a variety and diversity of ideas and firms implementing things that we've never seen before. So the influence again on COVID, from COVID, 88% of firms said that we are more focused on our future strategy than we have ever been. It's no longer a year in, year out endeavor. It's a where do we want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and much more of a corporate application of developing strategies and metrics. You know, digging deep into an individual partner's P&L. When you start doing that and take away a real estate cost as a line item and saying, as an equity partner, your percentage of the real estate costs or spend is X, technology spend is Y. And then you spend a lot on your people, you spend a lot on your travel, you spend a lot on expenses. And that net profit margin is very different now than it had been historically. So when do most people think that the pandemic is going to normalize? 37% said not until the second half of 22, 26% first half of 2023, and the remainder not until later in 23, even 24. So there's still a lot of issues that are impacting business across the board. But recruitment and retention, the war on talent, we all know it, we hear it morning, noon, and night, is by far number one. And while competitive fee structures, the impact of COVID, succession planning, IT security, even real estate are all up there as well, it is simply the war on talent.
Sherry, quick question. Did you get this? Was this a drop-down menu kind of pick all that apply? Or was it an open-ended question? How did you get to this set of answers?
We have been doing this for 9 years now, and every year we keep the same group of responses that you can select. Okay. And then if there's something new like COVID-19 impact, we add it. And then, so this is an evolution. So, but recruitment and retention, you know, it used to be in-house counsel departures, which we've seen a reversal due to COVID in that, where used to be I'm losing all my folks and having competition because everything's going in-house. Now, just in the past year, we're seeing a lot of in-house counsels returning back to their firms or to other firms again.
You know, so we're seeing it's amazing, this exact same stuff we've been picking up through our surveys. So it's amazingly consistent with what you bring to us.
Yeah. So the following strategies is your firm considering to maintain or increase growth and profits. The number one thing that most firms are doing is really still focusing on remaining stable and building business within. Let's look at our lawyers. Let's look at our clients. How can we continue to grow internal business synergies? But a very close second, as you can see, is recruiting more laterals to strengthen existing practices and grow through expansion, including headcount and or option increases. We're seeing new locations opening, particularly in some of these primary markets that are suffering. New York City, Chicago, San Francisco, where people just aren't returning to the office. In fact, the top 10 US law firm markets still have an occupancy rate in the legal sector under 20%. Tertiary smaller markets are much higher, but that is predominantly due to really the logistics and demographics. So buildings that have high public transportation, tall buildings, a lot of different commuting patterns versus just driving. In tertiary markets, we're actually seeing the return rate significantly higher in the 30 to even 50% area from market to market. Okay, what just happened? Move it, there we go. 60% of firms said that the number one thing we are looking at to mitigate fee demands and compression and maintaining profits is closely evaluating operations and streamlining services. So when you look at that tennis ball that we just torn apart, and we look at the fact we've been working remotely now for quite a long time, and for a lot of people it seems to be working really, really well. How are we then, when we look at our office space today, and by the way, even though office space is going down in square footage, it's still very, very important for the legal sector. It's not going away completely, but it's reforming itself and transforming itself in a way that we've never seen before. So you can see how, if we were evaluating operations and services, how are we able to then have that influence our real estate, but more importantly, the talent that is going into that. What the younger generation wants versus older versus staff, all of our surveys that we have seen, the partners actually want to come back 1 to 2 days a week. It's the associates that are 2 to 3 days a week, and staff, if they had their druthers, would never come back at all. They've all got 20% pay increases during COVID by working at home because they don't have the significant expenses that they had to come into the office every day. So what efforts has your firm done to improve recruiting and retention of attorneys? We all know that the associate increases went nuts throughout COVID. If I wasn't so old, I would seriously consider going back to law school, because if I come out of law school making $250,000+ a year, would have never ever dreamt that that would happen due to something like a pandemic. But the number 2 thing, which is actually tied for number 1, is creating a flexible and providing hybrid work options to our people. And that's really in particular with attorneys. And then a keen focus on inclusion and diversity. How do we need to look at our firm differently, be more diverse in not only our thought, but in our people? And predominantly because our clients are demanding it more now than we've ever seen. So as I work with law firms all around the globe, 100% of them, small, mid-size, mega firms, all want to grow. So I'm not sure where they're going to be fabricating attorneys and shipping them in from other countries, because where's all this talent going to come from? And 79% in the last 2 years are hiring away from other firms. 2 years ago, as I said, the number 1 reason for attorney departure was leaving for in-house counsel positions. So holding on to talent is more difficult now than ever. And I hate to say it to all of you on the call because you're more in that mid-sized firm level, but I'll give you an example of what we are forecasting to continue in tertiary markets. Salt Lake City, pre-pandemic, very, very few mega national firms and very few big law firms. Since then, 7 firms have entered the market, the largest one being Kirkland & Ellis. They started and they robbed 40 attorneys away from various firms. They now have 100. They're paying them almost twice as much as what their associates were being paid pre-COVID. They're offering them a global platform. They're telling them that they don't have to do any BD work because they have so much work that they will just let them work on their work, and that they will give them flexible schedules that they can come to the office. And by the way, their office is now the best office space in all of Salt Lake. So since that happened in the last 6 months, 3 law firms have gone under. Mid-size, small to mid-size. So the question therein lies, if I have great talent, how am I going to avoid this talent for whatever reason, whether it's money, quality of life, opportunity, platform? How do I, as a small to mid-sized firm, reinvent myself in a way? And we were talking about this yesterday, John, when if I hear the word culture, it's our culture one more time, that's great, but what is your culture? What is it? Name me the 5 things that are your culture that allow firms to say, this is why people stay. Culture is not a reason. What is culture? What are we defining as culture? What makes you different? And that's the greatest challenge that we're seeing with all law firms right now, because it's a free-for-all out there right now. We think it will stabilize in the next couple of years, but how do we make sure that you keep that talent? Well, one of the things firms are doing is increasing true succession plans, allowing firms to invent a succession plan that 3 to 5 years before a partner retires, that partner willfully participates in the succession plan, and it involves associates and younger attorneys. It not only is a great thing to do, period, but it also is a great recruiting tool. So DEI is huge. It's being demanded by clients predominantly. You can see only 18% of the firms said we're not really doing anything any differently to pursue business opportunities, but the rest are all saying, sure am. My clients are demanding it and I have no choice. Most firms do not believe that their levels of diversity, whether it's race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, gender identity, have gotten better. If it has, just as much has gone down. But one of the things firms are really doing is they're creating true mission statements for their diversity. They're getting involved in organizations, they're getting involved in affinity groups, they have mentorship programs. And again, if you're a real 10-man firm, you can't do that, but this is really what's happening. And 82% of the firms said that in the next 5 years, we are going to mandate our diversity initiatives. So technology, 45% of firms are spending more than 7% of their gross revenue on technology, which is up from 30% last year. So to give you an idea, pre-COVID, and you probably know your own benchmarks, technology was somewhere between 2.5% and 4% of gross revenue spend. Now it's double that. Real estate on the national average was between 6 and 7%. So we are beginning to see, and in some cases it's already happening, a flip-flop of your top 3 expenses that have historically been salaries, real estate, technology, to technology taking the 2 position. Because almost everybody is anticipating that there's going to have a significant increase in their tenant, in their technology spend. So the real estate workplace impact, 30% of the firms said we are now hoteling in some form. What is hoteling? It's really simple. You have a set of offices, they're all designed the same, and by the way, they're the same for everybody, same furniture, same size, same everything. The only difference is approximately 30% of the attorneys will not have an assigned office, but they'll have the same furniture, same technology, kids' photos will pop up on the screen that's in the office, their telephone number will go remote, their working files will come to them and be waiting for them. And most of the firms we're working with right now that have portfolios have a minimum of a 30% hoteling model that will grow to 50% over the next 5 to 10 years. 70% have already implemented remote working policies. 27% plan to mandate such. 70+% firms all plan to reduce their square footage in the future, and there's shorter lease terms across the board. But what is important here, and I want to close with this slide, is 24% of firms said we anticipate making drastic changes to our workplace moving forward. And another 52% said we anticipate making incremental changes. So when we look at the future workplace, as I noted, 65 to 69% of attorneys only plan to work remotely 2 to 3 days a week. And our 2022 forecast is as follows. Recruitment and retention will continue to be the #1 issue in the next couple of years, the war on talent. More and more attorneys, young and old, will be leaving the industry. Some that were already on the cusp of retiring, but a lot of younger attorneys just saying this isn't what I want to do for the rest of my life. Shift in client demands are huge. We will continue to see fixed fee compression. And for some people, it's a little hard to tell right now. But the macro environment forecast right now between continuation of the pandemic in some form that hasn't closed out at all, our geopolitical environment, which I think has influenced some law firms to some degree that will not be as influenced moving forward, inflation and our possible recession, oil prices, interest rate hikes, supply chain backlog. If any of you are in the process of looking at a lease and trying to schedule how long it's going to take to build out, we're using 30 to 40% increases in costs and anywhere from 150 to 200% increases in schedule due to all these things, including talent and labor shortage. So the effect on the legal sector, the war on talent is going to continue for the next couple of years. It will soften only because it's going to stabilize out when all the stealing kind of softens a little bit. Ultimate return to the workplace will be determined. There will be no set way, however. There is no longer a one-size-fits-all model. We're going to see all sorts of new and creative workplace solutions. We're seeing them already. A year ago, we saw them hypothesized on paper. Now we're seeing them built out and being used. Firm sizes are going to vary. Unfortunately, I think the small to mid-size firms are at the greatest risk of being gobbled up and or pushed out of business. So I think it's going to be really key for small to mid-sized firms to really think about what are your differentiators and why would someone want to come to your firm other others. The rising prominence in environmental issues, Big Four competition, it's going to be an interesting next 5 years, and the continued expansion of big law. So John, can you take that back? So in closing, and
I
I'm more than,
will take that back. Hang on. You're
and
asking me to work on technology, Sherry. So
I
anything could happen here.
I know. So I think, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. I think that for a period of time, this was very fearful for many, many firms. And I think that so many good things have come out of this. And I really think that it's an exciting time for firms to reevaluate every single component of their business, their people, their clients, their services, their technology. And it's a chance to be able to correct things that maybe weren't really good before, have a really open and honest dialogue with your partners and your associates, and really prioritizing what's most important to them. We do confidential attorney and staff surveys before we start any transaction. And because we're third party, we get 90% response rates. And what it's telling us so much, and you got to listen to it. And the firms that are really listening to what their people are saying, their clients are saying, and being adaptable. But adaptable doesn't mean this is a permanent solution. What you're saying and doing today, 6 months from now, may very well change 12 months, 18 months, 24 months. So very few firms are mandating, you better get back to the office. Those that have, they've had some problems with it. So balance is key. Finding out what is right for you, your people, your clients, and everybody else is key. And I know that there may be some people on this call, and you can't throw tomatoes at me, so I'm safe behind my screen, that may say, you know, we all got to get back to the office every single day. Well, if you are, and if everybody's happy doing that, and your firm is running swimmingly with that, great. But that's a rarity in today's environment. It's about flexibility, and it's about your people. So, in closing, we will go ahead and send to you this Bright Insight piece. If any of you would like to have a conversation with me or a private symposium, I'm more than happy to give it to you. There's no charge, and we just want to share this intellectual capital and help you guide yourself through these interesting times. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Always good data. Really good, strong data. And lawyers and law firms love the data, as we know. Let me ask you this. A lot of firms are looking at their leases as they come up and looking at downsizing and the options available. About how far out do you think a firm should look, get serious as the lease is coming up?
Well,
To start looking at space options, to start talking to the landlord about where they're going with their office space situation? How far out?
yep. So COVID, we now throw out lease expirations because they don't matter unless you just signed it 6 months ago and have 10 years left on it.
I
Almost
have
all
a
the
client who signed one just before January of 2020. Big,
yeah.
tiny new
So
office.
almost all of the transactions that I've completed in the last 24 months have 4 more years remaining on it. And you say, well, how do you do it? What do you do? It is market by market, situation by situation. And there is not a market in the United States that is the same anymore. Generally speaking, the legal sector had a consistency, as did markets. One market may have a higher vacancy rate, one may not. So for now, set aside your lease expiration and ask yourself this: do I have too much real estate? Am I 30,000 feet and I really can be 15? How are my people returning to the office, and what is it they're saying they want to do? Did I have high vacancy rates prior, meaning empty lawyer seats, and I wasn't able to fill them pre-COVID? Do I need to have a come to Jesus with myself and my firm and say, can I recruit these people and fill these seats? If you can't, get rid of it. Don't carry empty space anymore, because there's workplace solutions that can solve where you're going to put your attorneys if you grow. And then start doing a deep dive into the individual market. Who is your owner? Is it a local owner? Is it a pension fund? Is it a REIT? Is it a foreign investor? Is it a family? What is it? What is their risk and what is their exposure? We have been able to do deals with so much time left on their lease where we restructure leases and we're giving back space that we don't need early and saving lots of money early. And then we're retrofitting the space we keep to be more updated with today's standards. So you want to do a deep dive into that. And then lastly, you want to know what's going on in your market. And a good advisor will be able to tell you that you're sitting pretty because there's a 30% vacancy rate. Pre-COVID, it was 10%. So there is no one answer, John. It is really first and foremost, what is happening with your firm? Second, what in a perfect world would you really want to be size-wise? And then start doing the deeper dive. And you would be surprised how many landlords out there would rather keep half of you than none of you, even if you move out 4 or 5, 6 years from now.
Are personal guarantees on the lease generally a thing of the past?
Yes, they still are, but firms owners still are looking for lease securitization. Generally speaking, it comes in a form of a line of credit that will burn down, a letter of credit that will burn down. And it typically is anywhere from 25 to 50% of the transactional costs. Transactional costs are your tenant improvements, your free rents, commissions being paid to both parties. So, and that typically will burn down anywhere from 30 to 60% over the first 5 years of a lease, and then be maintained for the remaining. But I have not seen personal guarantee at all anywhere in a very long time, even with COVID.
And one
Sherry.
quick question, then I'm sorry, Ori, one quick question, then we'll get into our polling questions here. And that was around owning your real estate. Do you have a rough idea what percentage of smaller mid-sized law firms actually own their real estate?
Probably under 5%.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna say, because the closest that I've ever come from a partner pulling out a gun in a partnership meeting and hurting people was over the ownership of a building. And don't own a building. I mean, unless you're a 10-person firm in a small tertiary market and there's a great townhouse and you have no intentions of getting bigger, don't get into real estate. Practice law, make money, practice law, and go spend your money buying houses or real estate on your own. There are so many aspects of ownership. What if someone dies, leaves the firm? How do you can set up LLCs and PCs and all this stuff? But you are always going to have issues moving forward of when someone makes partner, are they an owner? I had a situation where a guy, half of his assets when he got divorced were his ownership in a building in Hartford, Connecticut. And then the market crashed and he actually had not planned tax-wise and had phantom income. Not only did he lose his entire principal because the market crashed, but he also had to come out of pocket $500,000 in taxes because he hadn't set taxes aside. So it was the triple whammy. He got divorced, he lost all equity, and he had to pay taxes on it. There are very rare situations where it makes sense. Practice law, make money, lease your space, get great flexibility, get outs if you can, and just go make money practicing law. My recommendation, do not own.
John, we got a barrage of questions, Sherry, both at registration on specific, the following. You've mentioned it already about size of offices, hoteling. What other changes to the office are people doing or contemplating? Give 2 or 3. What are the 2 or 3 top ones you see?
Sure. Well, fundamentally, private office sizes are going much smaller, and
right.
They should all be standardized. Do not have a partner office and associate office. They should all be one size. They should all be the same furniture. Pre-COVID, that was still a discussion point. Moving forward, it shouldn't even be a discussion point for obvious reasons. Number 2, the reallocation of space. We are trying to create a work environment where we're trying to get people back to the office. That doesn't mean necessarily 5 days a week, but when they're there, they want to get their gas tank filled. And so they want to come into a work environment where there's energy and vibrancy and technology everywhere and anywhere. So we're seeing a fundamental shift in the me space getting smaller and the we space getting larger. So a reallocation, more multi-purpose types of rooms, Zoom rooms that can be 6, 7 different things 7 days a week. And create a more collaborative environment. And then lastly, and really importantly, is technology. And I'm not just talking about laptops and gear in the cloud. I'm talking about training, talking about IT people, because this is only going to continue. The younger generation do more of their own work. It's only going to continue. The role of a legal assistant has changed dramatically during COVID, will continue to. We're actually seeing ratios now of timekeepers to legal assistants hitting 8-to-1, 9-to-1. And it's because that role has changed. Thus, your real estate needs to adapt. So if you have a 5-to-1 ratio now and you're signing a 10-year lease, you may at year 6 hit a point where you can get rid of half of those workstations, turn them into billable hour space. Ultimate flexibility, space and technology.
Let me, we got about 20 minutes left here, and I want to jump in with some polling questions. We'll talk a little bit about them as we generate the responses. I might ask for your predictions, Ms. Cushman
Sure.
and Mr. Gutfreund, and then we can look really smart or look like we're a little off base here. So, you know, Uri and I just did a series of programs in New York with a bunch of New York managing partners, and we took it out to New Jersey as well. And there was so much energy in the room, as you can imagine, around the hybrid workplace. And what are you doing? What's working? How are you getting people back into the office? Building the culture. I know you don't like the word, I do, but you're right. We have to define what the culture is and deliver the goods, because we all say we're collaborative and collegial, but we walk into many law firms that don't really feel that way once you get inside. But I wanted to ask a question here, this polling question. Uri, are we back on the deck here at the right place?
We are. We are.
And this is an audience polling question. And if you would pick your 2 top things that are working to build the team, there's that word Sherry hates, culture that's working to build that collaborative team type place. What's working at your firm among these different initiatives that we see? And Uri, why don't you talk to us a little bit about, as people are voting, what struck you when we were in New York, New Jersey, and people were sharing the types of things they're doing at their firms that seem to be getting good positive reaction by both lawyers and support staff?
Well, I'll take a little bit of the easy way out, and then I'll say something specific. But the easy way out is something that Sherry alluded to earlier, which is people are rethinking and being purposeful in planning this out, right? I think that before COVID, they did office, they did food, they did training, but half that was informal. Look at this.
Yeah.
Everything,
food.
all of the
We
above.
talked about food.
Food is always a number one. That was easy. That's easy.
Food and booze. You know, I have a client here in town that is really having great success with teams and sponsoring a softball team and a bowling team and you know, the 10K and these sorts of things. And their young lawyers in particular are just loving it. Larry Richard talked about the importance of socialization right now. People have been isolated, and there is an eagerness to reconnect, get back together. Sherry, what do you think of these sorts of things firms are doing to try to get that rah-rah team spirit back in place? Are you seeing anything that you think is particularly impactful?
Well, I think a lot of what people have noted here are definitely helping get people back. But I also think that firms have done a really good job with training remotely. And that was the number one thing we heard from law firms right after COVID is our greatest worry is about recruitment, retention, and mentorship of our young attorneys. So historically, a lot of mentorship was kind of ad hoc. You know, you're in the office 50, 60, 70 hours a week, and it's you call someone in, you call an impromptu meeting, you know, so-and-so you can just have come in and visit you. I think one of the things that people are really doing is doing some really good online training and technology. You know, whether it's lunch and learns or a specific subject matter expert who's coming in and talking about a case or a win or this or a BD opportunity. You know, what makes a great lawyer doesn't necessarily make them good at business development. So, you know, how are you now training attorneys to do more BD even in this new world? So I think engaging them to their personal interests, engaging them to their professional future career opportunities, and engaging them in a way that they feel like you're worried about me. And I think the sector got too far away pre-COVID from not taking the human being into consideration. They were more worried about the billable hours and, paying your dues, and you'll get to partner if you do, and everything else. And I really think that the world has shifted in a way that if you can actually value the people, get to know them more personally, what are their hobbies? What kind of things are important to them? Do they have a big family and maybe they want to adapt and shift their hours away more? That is what's going to keep people at your firm, is kind of showing the love and showing a personal interest in not only their career growth, but them as human beings. So I think, yeah, these lunch and, these social booze and food are all great, but that's still not getting to the personal level.
Right.
And I think if I were a partner in a firm and I had 5 associates working for me, I'd try to do some more one-on-ones. I would try to engage them on more of a personal level, find out maybe there's a hobby they like, whatever, and almost be like a true big brother, a true mentor to them. Because that's every survey that we see, all the associates that we talk to they're picking firms over feeling the love. It's just not about money anymore.
As when people register, we ask them to, answer a few survey questions, and we always ask, what questions do you have for our guest speaker? And it was funny as I was going through the list. One comment early on was, how do we convince the senior partners that remote work is okay? And then 2 questions down, how do we convince the junior partners and the associates that they should come back to the office?
Yeah.
And so you've got these very well entrenched positions, it seems. And you saw in our data, there's 1 in 8 law firm leaders on today's call who firmly believe you can't run a law firm remotely. It's got to be a bricks and mortar operation.
Yeah.
Give me the arguments. Where do I find the arguments if I'm a junior person saying, give me some remote work? What's my argument? Where do I get the data to present that argument?
Well,
And then we'll flip it.
Unfortunately, John, as I open this with, there's no longer a one size fits all answer. It is really what your firm is. And if your firm and your people are telling you this is what we want, then figure out the solution to give them what they want so they don't go somewhere else who's going to give it to them. So whether it's a combination of work-life balance, the number one thing that the younger associates want is a hybrid and flexible work environment. When they come in, they want to get loved all over. They want to be mentored. They want to be trained when they're in the office, but they don't want to come in 5 days a week. So you're kidding yourself if you think you're going to tell an associate, if that's what your people are truly telling you, that you better come in, and I'm not going to give you what you specifically told me we wanted, but we're going to ram it down your throat. So I think there isn't any specific data saying this is the right thing. You need to look at the data of your own people. You need to look at
present some pretty compelling data, industry data.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And we got it. I think, it's really interesting, these well-entrenched positions. We did a point counterpoint early on where we had a managing partner right in the heart of Manhattan, right in the heart of Midtown. He's a return to the office or you're fired kind of guy.
Well, what's happening? Is he keeping people?
We know him. I haven't chatted with him recently, but early on, he wanted people back, and he wanted them back now. And holding firm on that.
Morgan in New York. JP Morgan did that a year in. Everybody must get back mandated. One of my friend's sons works for JP Morgan, and he's living at the beach in Jersey, and so he started trekking in every single day. Less than a year later, they still listen. We don't care if you ever come in again. So you can't be all over the place, and you can't be extreme. It's got to be moderation. One of my national law firm clients out of Philly, I thought did something brilliant. Just to get everybody back, they said, you must come in the office 8 days a month. Everybody must come in every Wednesday. They started with something that simple.
The anchor day, yeah.
Come in every Wednesday, all of us. Now, obviously, if we want to start downsizing and everything else, we're not going to be able to do that, but that's step 1 is getting them back in. So every Wednesday, so 4 days of the 8 you're required to be in, must be every Wednesday. Then your other 4 days were flex, including if you wanted to do them all 5 days in 1 week. So the first thing is start and with moderation, and then work your way in, evaluate your people, see what they're saying, see how productivity billable. And I will say, and I think I mentioned this to you yesterday, John, I was in Montreal 2 weeks ago, and the chairman of a Canadian law firm came to our kickoff in Montreal, and he said, my greatest problem is getting the partners to come in. And because they're all saying, but Bob, I'm so productive. And he's like, our billable hours are up 30%, but we're just horribly neglecting everything else in our firm. That will have a catch up at some point in time. So it's a balance. And I can't tell you what's right for your firm. I can give you thoughts and ideas and considerations, but you only know your people. But I can't encourage enough. Listen to your people.
Yeah, we, as you were talking, we floated our next question here as to who are you talking to as you try to figure out your remote working policies. And here are the answers to that question. We're talking about it at the partner meetings. Only half are talking to their young lawyers, half are talking to support staff. Oh, I'm sorry.
Share results.
Hang on. I always forget to do that. So there we are.
Damn.
It's mostly just conversations.
People aren't talking to the clients very much. They want to know what other firms are doing, and we're going to talk about it to death at the partner meetings. But I agree with you, Sherry. Tune into your people. Ask them, surveys, conversations, be authentic, be sincere, really tune into their worlds and build the place that they want to come and stay and flourish. But talk to your people. Uri, what advice might you offer on this particular point? How do you figure out the right policy for your firm?
Well, I had a different take on this, soliciting input from clients. I think the reason why is clients don't care. Clients don't care. It's not a value for them now today. To Sherry's point about herself not traveling, I think that's the same where they're not meeting in person, and that's okay. So they don't care where you are. So I think that's probably why we have the 5%. The conversations with the partner meeting, sure.
Yeah.
That's no shock there.
No shock there at all.
And again, it's obviously practice group driven. If you're an IP attorney, that's different than a divorce attorney or, a real estate attorney or whatever. That's why you got to be careful to not have this is the way. And yeah, you might want to look at what your competition's doing, but aren't you trying to be better than your competition?
I agree. Aren't you trying to be different? Are we all selling vanilla all the time? That's the way
I don't think a bunch of tech companies sit around and go, I'm going to watch what the next tech company does, and maybe I'll come up with something new. They want to be ahead of it.
Now, this is another interesting question. I wanted, Uri, both you and Sherry, and this is, how are we implementing? Pick one from this list, folks. At what level are you implementing your remote work policies? Do you have firm policies across the entire firm? Is it more by office, more by department, more driven by each partner? My team's coming in. My team can work remotely. Who's driving the decisions as your firm implements its remote work policy? We can have policies all day long. It's the implementation and enforcement of policies that, that's where the rubber hits the road.
Results.
Do you want to speak to this? I'm going to ask you to predict, Sherry, where you think most firms.
I think that it's going to be more firm-wide and or partner. I encourage that it's firm-wide. And that doesn't mean that you can't have a different return to the office and remote policy for attorneys versus staff. But it should be a firm-wide policy. We're in this together. It's about the we, not about the me.
So the Jackson, Mississippi office, same policy as our office location in Jersey City, huh?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Again, there's a difference between a policy and a mandate. You can establish a policy with some flexibility. But I absolutely think you have clarity and it should be firm-wide. There you go. I predicted that.
That's what they say. What I see in real life is sometimes a bit different. I think a lot of decisions are being made at the office level and let that office figure out given its situation, what policies it wants to enact. I see that happening quite a bit. And a lot of partner driven, it's all about each individual partner.
If you have more than one offices, you should absolutely have a firm-wide policy. And if you only have one office, it should be a firm-wide policy. That doesn't mean you can't bend the rules a little bit. Maybe people, like one of the big things that we're seeing, and I'll use New York City, for example, is people are opening up or expanding tertiary markets outside of Manhattan, outside of New Jersey and Philadelphia, because people don't want to go into the city for obvious reasons. So they're growing other markets. So, there may be some, and that's also where most people live. So you got to take into account the 10 different factors that go into this, not just we're all coming in no matter what 5 days a week.
Yep, tune into your people, And my technology is acting up yet again here. We are having a heck of a time today. And we've talked about this throughout, which is the importance of being flexible. And
by the way, it's okay. I'm a consultant, so I can kind of push the envelope here. It's perfectly fine to make a decision and let everybody know this decision may go in a different direction in 6 months and 12 months. It's called leadership.
Sherry, I think through this pandemic, people have been so burned by this. I think everybody had remember, we did programs on return to office in the summer of 2020, summer of 2020, January 2021. We did. So most of our firms, I think, rolled out the latest, 3 times, 4 times. So I think some of them are a bit gun shy to say, but Sherry, to your point, I think that's a great idea. This is what we're thinking now. Look, it's been 2.5 years. Nobody knows the pandemic playbook. We don't know exactly where it's going, and that's okay. And that's real.
Fine. It's fine.
And what we keep hearing again is, the importance of being flexible to accommodate everybody in the office crowd and the people who prefer to work remotely. You talked about the anchor day. I think that's a great, Wednesday's our anchor day, all hands on deck. That's when we have our firm meetings. That's when we do our, collaborative stuff. And then beyond that, you can work remotely 4 days. You can work remotely 0 days.
Yep.
But having that flexibility, can we make it work? And another word we keep hearing is be intentional, deliberate, strategic, and thoughtful about what you're doing, why you're doing it. And because that's the way we've always done it, it isn't quite going to hold water anymore. We've always done it that way around here. As you said, I think quite firmly, Sherry, the old rules are out the window. And we've got to look at new ways, creative ways, innovative ways to do things. So these are interesting times in the world of law. And you mentioned Utah, that regulatory sandbox out there. We keep suggesting managing partners, keep your antenna up. These accounting firms have wanted to come in for a long, long time, and Utah and Arizona present some interesting opportunities, and we'll be doing a program on that.
And I'm gonna close with a visual. I've always kind of viewed the big law as like a tanker cruising through the ocean, and when it decides it wants to shift directions, 10 people are notified, and that tanker slowly shifts and slowly turns in the direction it wants to go. In my opinion, small to mid-sized firms are like jet skis.
Yep, much more agility.
Through the water, and you can take a turn one way and then another way and another way anytime you want, but you got to do it. And that's the hesitation that I've seen, is everybody's afraid to take a turn. A turn isn't a death sentence. A turn's a turn. You can always make the other turn.
Well, and if you're on a jet ski, you don't want to get hit by that aircraft carrier either. That's Kirkland.
And that's our parting image for today.
Yeah.
Don't get hit by the tanker.
Don't run into the tanker.
Don't run in, get hit by the aircraft carrier. Not at all. This is our contact information. Sherry, thank you again for being with us. Sherry's phone number, email address. Thank you for your willingness to entertain, follow up from folks participating in today's call. Thank you for sharing the Bright Insight report. We will circulate that tomorrow, if not Friday, certainly by the weekend. and the rest of this handout material. And thanks everybody for being with us today. And we'll see you in August, and have a great rest of the day. Thanks for being with us all.
Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Bye all.
Bye.